Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. So, just a couple of weekends ago, I finished installing a lift on my new Jeep Gladiator. I went with the Rusty's Off-Road, their 2-inch basic lift kit. So this video, the purpose is just a general overview and kind of a review of the quality of the parts. How much lift did I get? How does it ride? What do you get? How much does it cost? That sort of thing. In a separate video is all the technical stuff if you're actually looking to do the installation. But this is just a review of the kit. So if you're shopping and comparing one kit to the next, this just gives you some insight about what you get with the Rusty's kit. So I thought for starters, maybe I'd just explain why did I pick the Rusty's Off-Road lift kit. Because I couldn't find hardly any reviews online from other people with a Gladiator specifically that had used their kit. But my general criteria was I wanted a full spring replacement kit, so front and rear springs. I wanted new shocks, obviously front and rear. Then to correct some of the caster that you lose as you lift a Jeep, I wanted at a minimum longer front lower control arms, and then at a minimum an adjustable front track bar to recenter the front axle under the frame after you lift it, because obviously as you go up, if you keep using the stock factory track bar, it's going to shift the axle to one side. So I wanted to be able to recenter it. And then of course I wanted to do everything on a budget. I was buying new tires and wheels at the same time, and all this stuff just starts to add up really quickly. So there are some really great lift kits out there on the market that are in the $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 and up price range. That was just outside of what I wanted to spend and what I really needed based on how I'm going to use the Jeep. So for me, knowing that I wanted to run 35s, didn't want too much lift, right? Because I didn't want it, some 4-inch lift, and it looks goofy with 35s. So you gotta kind of plan ahead what size tire do you plan to run, at least right now. So for me, it came down to either the Rusty's kit or the Mopar 2-inch lift, which is really popular. Tons of people running the Mopar kit, and it's really good. I'm not knocking that by any means. So to make the two kind of comparable, so the Mopar kit, if you search around, I think the cheapest I saw it, there's a vendor on eBay, I think it was, that sold it for like $12.50. But the Mopar kit doesn't include an adjustable front track bar. So figure another roughly $250 to add in a front track bar. So that puts you at roughly $1,500 for a Mopar kit. The Rusty's 2-inch basic kit is $899, so $900. But it doesn't include shocks. So I knew I wanted to run the Fox shocks. Typically they'll be roughly $600. I think I actually paid a little less than that if you do some shopping around, or if you find some discount codes. But if you figure roughly $600 in shocks, again, you end up about $1,500. So from a cost perspective, the Mopar kit and the Rusty's Off-Road kit come out to be roughly the same. Now obviously you'll have to figure in some additional shipping. I'm in North Carolina, Rusty's is in Alabama, I think it is. So it cost, I think it was like $114 to have the kit shipped to me. So that's something to think about, but by and large the two kits are roughly comparable. But the Rusty's kit gives you some additional things that you're not getting in the Mopar kit. And for me, that's just kind of what made the difference. I just decided I wanted to try the Rusty's kit. I ran some of their stuff a long time ago on an XJ, a Cherokee that I had years ago. So what you get with the Rusty's kit, not only do you get an adjustable front track bar, you also get a rear adjustable track bar. Now in my opinion, after installing it, you don't really need an adjustable rear track bar. It's a nice add-on, and should I ever lift it higher to run 37s, maybe I put a 3/4 inch spacer or something in there, the ability to adjust the rear track bar is kind of nice. And as you'll see, as I do the installation, I sat out a lot of the parts and show you the stock versus the Rusties, and that'll be in this video. So you'll see that the Rusties components are more heavy duty. The other thing that you get that was a big deal to me, so the Mopar kit gives you longer front lower control arms, but they are fixed length. It's just like the stock unit, except it's a 1/4 inch longer. The Rusties kit comes with adjustable front lower control arms, so you can have some adjustability there to dial in the amount of caster that you want. Or again, should I lift it a little bit higher, right, I can adjust it and continue to dial in some additional caster. Now the Mopar kit does include front bump stop extensions that the Rusties kit does not, and they don't offer them, at least anything specific to the Gladiator at the moment. But I just found a company called Zone Off-Road. They're just a generic 2-inch spacer front bump stop extension, and so that's what I went with, and it was like $20. So no big deal there. The Mopar kit also includes a rear bump stop extension that again the Rusties doesn't. At the moment I have not done anything for the rear. I'm going to flex this suspension at some point and decide, do I really need anything with my 35s? Is it close to rubbing the fenders? And I'll just make a judgment call at that point. But again, we're just talking a bump stop extension, not a major component of the lift kit. The other thing that the Rusties kit gives you that I don't think anyone else in the market does, and certainly not the Mopar kit, is a front track bar brace, and they automatically include that with their lift kit. It's a nice heavy duty component. Now at the moment I haven't installed it. I'm on the waiting list to get the new steering gearbox to help address some of the loose steering and the wandering that's so common with the Gladiators and the JL Wranglers. So I just decided to hold off installing this at the moment. But this is a nice piece that is included with the kit, right? So if you wanted something like this, the other popular option is from Synergy. It's a track bar brace and also includes a sector shaft brace, again to support the end of the steering gearbox. So just think about that. It may save you some money if you're looking to add something like this. So in the end, that's why I decided to give the Rusties off-road lift kit a try. So we'll keep going with the video. I'll show you how some of the parts compare, and then I'll also show you how much lift I got and those sorts of things. Okay, so while I have the front end disassembled, I thought I'd take a moment and compare some of the Rusties parts versus the OE parts that we're taking off. And keep in mind, mine is the Overland model, not a Rubicon. So the Rusties 2-inch lift spring, I just did a free end measurement, obviously non-compressed. The Rusty spring is 19.5 inches long versus the OE spring, which is 18 inches long. Of course, that only tells half of the story, because the spring rate is really what's going to determine our end rad height. And the Rusty spring is a thicker coil, so it's a thicker material, most likely has a stiffer spring rate, which would be good if we put a heavier front bumper or a winch on the front. It will help support some of the weight a little bit better. But just as a free non-compressed length, the Rusties is about 1.5 inches longer, but I expect it to be a little stiffer, so we'll probably get more lift height than just 1.5 inches. Comparing the sway bar end lengths, the stock sway bar end lengths are 5.25 inches long. The extended front sway bar end lengths that come with the Rusties kit are 8.25 inches long. So it will be interesting to see if we end up with 3 inches of total lift height, if they've set up the end lengths to match how much they expect to get out of lift height, but we'll see. Then we have the control arms. So this is the factory front fixed length control arm. From center of the eye to the center of the eye, these are 24 inches long. The Rusties, of course, are adjustable, and let's see if I can get it where you can see it. Obviously this is a much beefier control arm. This has a lot more weight to it. Rusty's recommends setting up their control arm at 24 7/16. So remember, stock was 24 inches. This is 24 7/16. And then as another comparison, the Mopar 2-inch lift, at least for the Gladiators, they are a fixed length front lower control arm. They're 24 1/4 inches. So Rusty's is suggesting a little bit longer than what comes in the Mopar kit. So, but obviously it's adjustable, and we can dial that in to get the amount of caster that we want. And then of course the last component in the front end is the track bar. So this is the OE track bar, and then compare it with the Rusty's unit. Just has a lot more weight to it. This feels really beefy. If I were shopping just for a front adjustable track bar, my preference would be one that has like an OE drag link style adjustment. So to adjust this one, you loosen the jam nut and then you twist the end in or out to lengthen or shorten the track bar. But that means you have to take the bolt out each time to make that adjustment, whereas kind of an OE drag link style, you've got an adjusting sleeve with 2 pinch bolts. So when you loosen those, then you can just twist the sleeve and it will either lengthen or shorten the track bar, which is kind of nice. You don't have to keep taking the bolt out to dial in the length. But this is the one that comes with the kit. So that's not enough of a incentive to go spend a couple $100s on a different track bar. And once you get this dialed in, then you don't have to make any other adjustments unless you change ride height. So it's not the end of the world. So overall, all the Rusty stuff is much beefier than the OE components. No surprise there. That's kind of what you would expect. Of course, with their their coil springs, they have their own coil spring isolator that fits at the bottom, and of course they're cut specific to their springs so that you don't end up with any odd bowing of the front spring. So make sure you install theirs. Don't reuse your OE coil spring isolator. Use what they send with the kit. So that's just kind of an overview of the components, and then as I get the rear suspension taken apart, we'll take a look at some of those. Looking at the rear springs, I think will be really interesting. Okay, so I've got one of the rear coil springs off the back of the truck. So just an interesting comparison. So this is coming off a Overland, so it's got the 439. This is the driver's side rear spring. Just comparing it to the Rusty spring, you can see the Rusty's is a dual rate, tighter up top and a little further spacing apart at the bottom. Without any weight on them, the OE spring is 19 inches free length, and then the Rusty spring is slightly longer at 20 inches. But the Rusty spring, just like in the front, is a thicker material. It is a noticeably heavier spring, just holding one beside the other. The Rusty spring is substantially heavier. So I suspect it's going to be a stiffer spring rate, which would be good for carrying weight in the bed of the trunk, or if you're doing some overlanding and you've got some bed racks or one of those tents that go on the bed, that may be handy as well. And the same thing for the rear track bar. The rear track bar is, the OE one, it's pretty flimsy. There's really not much to it, whereas the Rusty's one, I don't know if I can, alright, I can't one hand pick it up. It is substantially heavier and beefier as well. So, and of course it's adjustable just like the front track bar. So I'm going to keep moving. I'm running out of daylight, but I wanted you to see the difference in the components. The Rusty stuff is noticeably heavier duty in the rear, just like it was in the front. Okay, so here's what you really wanted to know. How much lift did I get from the Rusty's 2-inch lift? I got 2.5 inches of lift in the front and 1.5 inches of lift in the rear, and I ended up with 1 inch of rake. So that's exactly what I wanted. I think it looks perfect with 35s. I still have a little bit of rake so that when I put a trailer behind it, it's not sitting, nose high. But stock, I had close to 1.75 inches, almost 2 inches of rake, and that just looked a little goofy to me. So this setup from the Rusty's kit, 2.5 inches in the front, 1.5 in the back with 1 inch of rake, to me is perfect with 35s. I'm running 35 1250 Nitto Ridge grapplers on a 17-inch wheel. The wheels are Icon Rebounds. They're a 17 by 8.5 with a -6 offset, and I went with their matte bronze. So that -6 offset, keep in mind, is going to push the tire out. Now these don't rub at all anywhere. Lock to lock, they do perfect. But they do stick the tire out a little bit. So depending on your taste, keep that in mind. They actually stick out maybe a little further than would be my first preference, but it's just hard to find a wheel that you like in the size that you want, in a color that you like, at a price that you can afford, and the perfect offset. And so these are what I ended up with, and I think they look awesome. I'm super happy with them. Okay, so I've been driving on the suspension and the new tires for a couple of days now, actually about a week. Though I'm working from home, so I haven't put a ton of miles on it. But I was trying to think, like, how would I describe the ride quality, right? Because when you do a suspension change, you don't want to ruin the ride quality. And I'd say the Rusty's kit with the Fox shocks is very similar to the OE ride quality. It certainly isn't harsh, bouncy, any of those negative things that you might associate with an aftermarket suspension. There are certain realities that you can't get away from, one of which is that this is a lifted Jeep. So obviously a higher center of gravity. Just the reality is you're going to have a little bit more sway as you're driving, particularly at highway speeds. That's just something that you can't change. That's part of having a lifted Jeep. I do think it's maybe slightly more noticeable, small imperfections in the road surface. Now I think that could probably be attributed more to the either the E-rated tires or the Fox shocks. I don't really think that's a byproduct of the suspension itself, the springs. That's really more of a product of the tires and or the shocks. Not really a complaint, just an observation that I think I do pick up small imperfections just a little bit more that are transmitted into the cab of the truck. I've mentioned it before. One of the big complaints about the Gladiators is that they have loose steering. It's also a complaint on the JL Wranglers as well. Jeep a couple of weeks ago released a technical service bulletin to help address that, and the fix is a new steering gearbox they've come out with. I'm on the waiting list to get that new steering gearbox. To me, especially with the higher center of gravity, and the wider tires, you begin to notice the looseness in the steering a little bit more. It's just a little more pronounced, in my opinion. I think once I get the new steering gearbox, and then I can go back and put on the track bar brace that comes with the Rusty's kit, I think I'll see an improvement there. I don't really think that's a commentary on the lift kit itself. So whether you went with the Mopar kit or the Rusty's kit or any of the others that are on the market, that is just the reality of a higher center of gravity and the loose steering that some of the Gladiators seem to come with. So I hope that gives you a little perspective. I'm very happy with the ride quality. It didn't ruin it by any means. I could jump in it, drive it every day. No complaints from that perspective. So there you go. That's my review of the Rusty's Off-Road 2-inch lift for the Jeep Gladiator. I hope you find this helpful. If you have any questions at all about installation, review of the kit, what does it include, how do I like it, any of those sorts of questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll help in any way that I can. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like and subscribe. That way you can stay up to date for anything that I'm working on with the Gladiator or any other projects here in the garage. So thanks for tuning in to this edition of Scruff's Garage. We'll see you next time.